The silence that followed the cracking of the sky did not fade with dawn, nor did the trembling in the air subside after the first memory-born monstrosities stepped from the glowing fracture. It lingered, thick and heavy, as if the world itself had stopped breathing. The wanderer stood motionless beneath the skeletal trees, feeling the weight of something ancient coil around his spine. The presence he had sensed since the heavens tore open still circled him like a shadow, learning how to become flesh, observing him, trying to remember something about him. Before he could discern whether the presence intended to consume him or claim him, the air buckled. A pulse of cold, metallic stillness expanded outward, spreading through the clearing with slow certainty. Then he felt it. An entity approaching not through the trees, but through the very fabric of memory itself. It moved with intention, like something that had waited centuries for this exact moment. The ground hummed beneath the wanderer's boots, and the frost still coating the leaves began to shimmer, not with the soft reflection of moonlight, but with a deeper, crimson luminance. The entity was not walking toward him. It was materializing out of the distortion forming between the spaces of the world, its outline blurred, impossible, undefined. The wanderer felt something inside him respond, an instinct that did not belong to his life as he remembered it. His pulse aligned with the rhythmic thrum of the creature's presence, beating in recognition. The creature extended a limb, neither arm nor branch nor shadow, quivering, signaling him to approach, to acknowledge something long denied. Before he could take a step, the presence that had been following him suddenly recoiled, shrinking into unseen layers of the world as though terrified of the new arrival. The kneeling entity collapsed fully to the ground, its swirling memory light sputtering into darkness as it flattened itself in abject submission, as if the new presence embodied something its ancient code forbade it to defy. The void being advanced with steps that made no sound, yet each movement sent ripples through the fabric of reality, bending time around its silhouette. Even the faceless entity behind him twitched violently, sensing the merging of forces it had once sworn to serve. The wanderer's heartbeat synced with the pulses emanating from the void being, slow, deliberate, monumental. His vision blurred, images bleeding into one another as memories not his own seeped into the edges of consciousness. He saw a vast expanse of blackened plains beneath skies, bruised with twilight storms, a colossal citadel constructed of bone and obsidian rising from the heart of a dying world. Upon it sat a figure draped in armor of fractured starlight, cold, wrathful, eternal. Then the vision shifted, twisting violently, pulling him into a different memory, one where he stood not as observer, but as participant. He saw his own hands bloodied, wrapped around the hilt of a sword, forged from the screaming core of a collapsing star. He felt the weight of it, the heat of it, the burden of its purpose. And around him, armies forged from fading eras bowed their heads in reverence and terror, the memory ripped away before he could grasp more. The void being raised an arm composed of unlight, stretching toward him with a slowness that suggested inevitability rather than threat. As it reached him, the air collapsed inward, bending toward the wanderer as if he were a gravitational center forming in the heart of the world. The faceless entity on the ground twitched, sensing the merging of forces it had once sworn to serve. The wanderer stood alone, breathing hard, knowing now with terrifying certainty that he had not been chosen by these entities. He had once commanded them. But before he could make sense of this revelation, before he could reach into the growing storm of recovered memory, something else stirred beyond the tree line. Something that did not bow. Something that did not serve. Something that had hunted him before he forgot who he was. And it had finally found him. The air thickened again, heavier than before, a pressure like the weight of unspoken memories collapsing inward. He sensed the change before he understood it, a subtle distortion in the shape of the world, as if the night had inhaled and forgotten to breathe out. The earth trembled beneath his feet with a slow, rhythmic pulse, and for a moment it felt as though the soil remembered footsteps that had walked long before his time. The shadows between the trees stretched, elongated and folded inward, converging in a spiral that seemed to swallow all light, all reason, all distance. Then the spiral opened like a wound in reality. From within it, something vast dragged itself forward. It carried the outline of a human shape, but only in the way a fever dream carries the outline of a face. The body was long, elongated as if stretched by the hands of forgotten fears, its limbs jointed in the wrong places, bending in memories of angles that never existed. Skin hung across the creature in rippling layers, like pages of a burned book fused together, faces pressed beneath the surface, shifting in slow agony, emerging then sinking again, as though drowning in the flesh that contained them. None of the faces were alive. None were dead either. They were recollections given form, fragments of people the world had once known, but not well enough to remember fully. The creature moved with a sound that was not footsteps, but something like the dragging of old thoughts across stone. He felt the vibration inside his ribs before he heard anything, as if the sound traveled through bone rather than space. Before he could flee, it lunged, its motion faster than anything natural, limbs appearing and disappearing along its sides like a distorted memory manifesting in real time. He stepped back, narrowly avoiding a crushing strike that tore a strip of earth as though it were cloth. The force shoved him sideways into a pine tree, bark exploding like brittle stone. Pain seared his side, but the proximity of the creature's malformed body was worse. He could smell the stale odor of forgotten lives in the heat radiating from its twisted mass. It attacked again, body deforming mid-motion, new limbs erupting from beneath the skin in grotesque arcs. He dodged, feeling tips of bone-shaped protrusions slicing the air near his head. The forest shifted around them, branches reacting like nervous witnesses. He steadied himself, drawing on the force awakened inside him during the first night of the fracture. It surged through him not as strength, but as clarity, making every motion of the creature decipherable, as though he could read the intention of each monstrous limb before it struck. The creature lunged again. This time he stepped forward instead of back. Instinct guided him, the pull of something older than fear propelling his motion. He struck the creature with his full weight, connecting with one of its partially formed rib-like structures. The rib quivered, shuddering like something caught between states of bone and recollection. The creature convulsed violently, faces beneath its surface contorting in unison. A chorus of muffled voices overlapped like memories trying to speak through wet earth. The sound drove needles of cold through his skull, but he did not falter. The presence inside him steadied his legs with a force that did not feel his own. The creature reeled backward, but its retreat was brief, swelling as it absorbed darkness around it. When it stepped forward again, its limbs hit the ground like hammers. The next strike came from above, a descending mass of fused limbs meant to crush him completely. He rolled, gravel slicing through his palms, feeling the earth rupture behind him like rotten wood. He rose to his feet, breath burning, aware of the instinct guiding his every move. The creature lunged once more, blurred around the edges, as though its defining memory shifted mid-existence. He braced, feeling its force before it reached him, like a wave of intention pressing through the air. The collision slammed him into the ground. Cold dirt filled his mouth. The weight of the monstrosity pressed against his chest, suffocating him with stolen fragments of life. Its many faces hovered above him, overlapping, merging and splitting, each one staring with empty recognition. Memories bled into his mind, visions of people he never knew, lives half forgotten. Beneath the fading memories, something familiar pulsed, something that should not have been there, a fragment of his own past, buried deep, lost long before he understood. The creature sensed his recognition. Its movements stuttered as the memory writhed against its mass. A face pressed toward him, half remembered, half idealized, fragile as smoke. The memory inside it tried to surface, but the creature held it captive. pressure on his chest tightened, yet an instinctive surge of grief and defiance flared within him. He drove his forearm upward into the creature's torso. Its mass recoiled with a sound like splitting ice. Faces inside rippled violently as the memory briefly regained awareness, disrupting the creature's rhythm. He pressed himself upright, lungs burning, ribs aching, guided by the force inside him. It latched onto the memory trapped within the creature, pulling it like a magnet to reclaim a lost piece of himself. The creature staggered, limbs thundering against the ground. Its attacks lost precision, corrupted by the internal struggle of the memory fighting for freedom. He circled toward the flank, where the memory pulsed strongest. The creature reacted instantly, flailing limbs that smashed trees, tore earth, splitting roots like brittle bones. He dove beneath a descending limb, wind whipping past his neck, and drove his weight into the creature's side. His hands gripped flesh that felt solid and intangible simultaneously. Beneath his fingers, the memory throbbed, a heartbeat in rhythm with his own. The creature convulsed, thrashing violently as the stolen fragment strained to escape. Its limbs flailed, faces twisted in agony. The forest shivered under the creature's unraveling form. He pressed forward, guided by the pull of the memory calling him from within the beast. Shadows bent unnaturally around them. The sky flickered with pale pulses, remnants of the fracture reacting to the turmoil below. Every movement of the creature now decipherable, he advanced. He moved toward the point where the memory pulsed brightest. The creature lunged, but instinct and clarity allowed him to intercept with the full force of his body. The world erupted in blinding light where his hand met its flesh. The memory tore free, ripping through layers of fused tissue and bone, unraveling the monstrosity itself. The creature collapsed in on itself, folding into the dirt like a scar finally erased. Fragmented faces wavered for a heartbeat, then sank beneath the surface, leaving only the trembling air in their absence. The memory of her filled the space within him and the forest, stretching out, anchoring him to the world once more. She was there, real, a fragment of love that survived the cruelty of the fracture. Before he could embrace the warmth of her presence, the forest whispered again. Shadows stirred beyond the clearing, bending with intent, aware the balance had shifted. The ground rumbled faintly beneath his boots. The air thickened with the scent of distant iron and frost. He realized the battle won here was only temporary. There were forces older than memory, older than grief, waiting beyond the tree line, ones that had watched the world fracture, sensing his awakening, and now would come for him. The warmth of her memory settled in his chest, steadying his pulse. It was a brief reprieve. The forest seemed to bow around him, acknowledging both victory and warning. His eyes rested on her form, then toward the shadowed edges of the trees where movement coiled. A faint whisper ran through his mind, ancient and unyielding. This is only the beginning. The memory, the love, and the battle revealed truths he had not yet comprehended. Strength surged within him, mingled with fear, grief, and recognition that his path demanded reckoning. He drew a breath, feeling the pulse of her presence and the echo of the fracture. The fallen creature lay before him, yet beyond this night, new challenges awaited. He had survived. He had reclaimed a piece of himself, and with it, something deeper awakened inside him. Even the fracture and its monstrous offspring could not take it. As he turned to leave the clearing, aware of shadows stretching beyond, he felt the pull of the next hunt. The journey, the war, the reckoning was only beginning. Subscribe and follow as the shadows stir once more, and the past returns to demand its due in episode 3. The wanderer steps forward, carrying memory, love, and a warning yet to be faced.